Not many of you know this about me, but I am a swordsman, specializing in the rapier. And in the style of rapier I happen to be studying, there is this concept called the counter posture, where you position your sword and your body in such a way that your opponent has no direct line of attack, and only you would land a blow if both opponents lunged at once. The important thing to note, however, is that counter posturing never happens in the heat of battle. Instead, it happens when the adversaries are far away, sword tips barely touching, if at all. This idea holds true in all battles, that while the battle may be chaotic, it is in the end largely determined by the starting positions, meaning the outcome could be predicted, even in the wildest of settings. Here we are again. I'm talking about the live series for the second time on this channel, because you guys liked it so dang much last time. I would still be in the single-digit subscribers if it wasn't for that one video I made. So I just wanted to thank you all for your support and for getting me to where I am now. I was getting 0 views or anything, but now you guys are enjoying my other content as well. And I just wanted to say thank you for all of your support so far. Anyway, let's get into the predictions now. The first thing you might be wondering is why I'm making a prediction video in the first place. After all, they've been done before. But people will look at all the statistics and they will average out the number of kills people have and average placements and all of that stuff to determine who is mathematically the most likely winner. But now we have a lot more information to go off of. Now that we know how the alliances fell and what the general premise of wildlife is, we know what skills are necessary for succeeding in wildlife. The number one skill that will help any member win in wildlife is going to be resourcefulness. Because every single group needs to firstly figure out what the wild card is, secondly, how to deal with the wild card and not let it mess up their plans, and third, how to use the wild card to get an advantage over the other alliances. So whoever is the most adaptable and whoever is the most resourceful and is able to quickly figure out what they need to do in order to gain an advantage is going to win in the end. And fortunately for us, we already have a few examples that show us who has this skill and who doesn't. I'm mostly going to be looking at episode 2 for who's the most resourceful because episode 2's wildcard actually gave a real threat of death. While some people did die from the wildcard in episode 1, like Pearl and Scar, episode 2 was a lot more lethal and required a lot more resourcefulness in order to quickly overcome it, while episode 1 was kind of just chill. Covering everyone in the live series just group by group, let's start with the Spanners. The Spanners comprise of Grian, Mumbo, and Skiz. For starters, Grian has an inherent advantage because he knows all of the wildcards ahead of time, which means that while he'll probably make it close to the end due to his skills and his average placement, he probably won't make it to the very end because he lacks the ambition, as, he doesn't want to abuse his advantage. For the rest of the group, we have Mumbo and Skiz, who don't have a very high average placement and usually focus on doing other things. Mumbo usually just likes to live in the moment and have fun where he's at, and Skiz usually has some other project, but it's not directly related to winning, like he had his affirmations in Limited Life and he had the Heart Foundation in Secret Life. It's worth mentioning for the group's resourcefulness that they did have a plan to gain an advantage over others by using haste to go mining a lot more efficiently in episode 2, but in the end they didn't pull it off. Overall, I don't think the winner is going to come from the Spanners, so let's move on to the next group. Now let's talk about the disaster group, the Bamboozlers. All 3 of these people are kind of notorious for dying early. Lizzie died first last time, and Jimmy just barely beat the Canary Curse last time by a singular placement. Scar did win last time, and Jimmy has beat the Canary Curse, so there is, I think, a small chance that they'll kind of rise up as the underdog and actually do really well this season. But looking at how they handled episode 2, I don't think that's going to be the case. Personally, I saw 2 mistakes in the way that the Bamboozlers handled the wildcard in episode 2. Firstly, they assumed at first that the challenge was that they had no food to eat at all, and they had to conserve their hunger bars. This isn't a horrible idea for a wildcard. It is very brutal, but I'm sure they've seen challenge videos, people doing 0 hunger runs where you can't eat anything, and it does seem pretty cool, but they did hold on to that notion for a little bit longer instead of experimenting around with things, with the different things that were happening. So that takes away from their resourcefulness a little bit. Secondly, they held onto stone shovels as their food source for a little bit too long. When they discovered that stone shovels were a decent food source and gave a decent amount of hunger, they declared that the solution, and Lizzie even went around parading around the whole server, telling everyone that stone shovels were the thing to eat, even when everyone else had found a much more efficient, cheaper, and stackable item to be eating instead. We're going to see later on that finding one kind of inefficient food source and running with it for way too long is a pretty common oversight when it comes to the episode 2 wildcard. So it's not like they're the only ones and they're so stupid for doing that, but it does mean that they are one of the less resourceful groups. Next, let's talk about the tough guys, Etho, B-Dubs, and Tango. This alliance follows a common theme from a lot of other seasons of the Life series, where you have 3 of the best guys in some kind of a group together, even if there's other people in there as well. But you see over and over again, you had, I think, 3 of them in the Heart Foundation. You had Ties, which had 3 of them in Limited Life. And then you had, obviously, Best in Last Life as the original. This group consistently succeeds mostly in their loyalty and their teamwork with each other, which pushes them pretty far into the season. However, the one difference is that they are abandoning their one strength this season because they've decided to preemptively agree on backstabbing each other and not trusting each other and living separately, which is very funny and very entertaining, but it also means that they are a little bit less likely to win, unfortunately. Now to cover the family, which is made of Jem and Joel. This is an exceptionally strong group just because both of them are very good at PvP. Joel especially has gotten tons of kills in past seasons of the Life series. He just never wins because he's too reckless and he loses all of his lives too quickly. However, this season might just be the change that he needs in order to win, because he's actually deciding to be calm this season. He's deciding to be kind to others. His obsession with Fast and the Furious might actually lead to the character development needed for him to win the Life series. Also, Joel's kind of reckless strategies in past seasons might translate to higher adaptability and more opportunistic decisions in Wildlife. I definitely think that these two will both make it to the final 5 at least, if not there being a finale between the two of them duking it out, simply because they are both very good at PvP and they are both very resourceful. If you watch their episode 2, you're going to see that they immediately, within like a minute, figured out several decent food sources for the entirety of episode 2, and they just spent the entire episode building. They didn't die at all, and they just went on as if nothing happened. Next up is Renwood Mound, which comprises obviously of Rendog and Martin. Martin is incredibly capable, and he usually does really well in the Life series. He's even won one before, obviously in Limited Life. And Ren has done well in some seasons as well, especially Last Life when he got 2nd place. But the bigger reason why I'm excited for Renwood to make it really far is because the last time Ren and Martin got together was in 3rd Life. And when they get together, there is a lot of drama and a lot of plot. You can even see some of the other members draw attention to this, saying that they're the D&D characters and they're playing D&D because they're into so much role-playing and they're into so much drama. That's why while Rendog might not be the most popular choice for the most likely to win the Life series, I think he has a very good chance if he just builds up his plot armor. And last but not least, as this is the biggest group with 5 people total, we have, Quadruple G plus Big B. Hey, that rhymes. Okay, that's actually a good name. Anyway, this is a very strong team. It has 3 previous winners of the Life series, those being Scott, Pearl, and Cleo. And aside from that, Impulse is the best contender for a winner from this team. Overall, this is a very strategic team. You have a lot of strategists. If you watch Impulse's or Scott's previous seasons, there's a lot of planning and a lot of strategy involved in what they decide to do. However, that does not necessarily mean that they are the most resourceful team. They actually are the other group that fell into the pitfall of holding on to some random inefficient food source in episode 2. They spent the entire first randomization looking for amethyst when there were other better things to eat, even losing a life in the process of trying to find this amethyst, which is just another example of a group finding what they believe to be the singular solution and holding on to that for way too long instead of going with the flow and experimenting other things and seeing what works. Now I want to talk for a minute specifically about Impulse, because he's a very interesting character. He is by far one of like the most predicted people to win because he's felt like it's been a long time coming. He does pretty well usually, and he really, really wants to win. However, Impulse has this kind of curse, this kind of pattern of having a very ironic, poetic ending when it comes to whenever he actually makes it close to the end. In Third Life, he was playing this kind of social manipulation game where he would play all sides in order to get the best advantage. And this worked for the majority of the series, but what got him in the end was something that he could not predict and he could not manipulate. It was his day one crew best friend B-Dubs betraying him for something completely random, just for the memes. A clock. And then in Limited Life, Impulse was a part of the Ties team. And the Ties team was a bit more focused on these kind of nobler ideas. They had this idea of getting Ties to the final 3, and they had this idea of them sacrificing for each other and them being loyal to each other. You had Skiz giving up his time at the end to Etho. But in the end, what happened was that Impulse was participating in a fair, noble game to see who was going to be the winner. And what happened? Martin killed him in a cutthroat, ruthless way, just taking complete advantage of the nobility of the other two. And I think this really encapsulates Impulse's tendency to not feel the energy of this series that he's in. In Limited Life, it was all about being cheap and cutthroat and ruthless. In fact, most of the kills were from Skynet, from dropping cartfuls of TNT on other people's head. That is not a noble way to kill someone. That is an incredibly cheap way. They don't see it coming, and they can't do anything about it because you're a million blocks above them. He was too noble in his season focused on betrayal, and that was what got him killed in Limited Life. Now, the problem that I see with Impulse's strategy in Wildlife is the exact same thing. He doesn't match the energy of the series. Wildlife is about being opportunistic. It's about going with the flow. It's about seeing what's happening and reacting to it. Impulse is not going with the flow. He's scheming, he's plotting, he's holding grudges. And while this is a very entertaining character, it is exactly opposite what is needed to win. If you hold grudges and if you have these elaborate plans, chances are it's going to get ruined by the wild card. If Impulse wants to win, he's going to need some character development. He's going to need to let go of his saltiness and his scheming and his insane desire to win, and he's going to want to go with the flow and be opportunistic and take things as they come. Which I think is a really interesting direction to go for Impulse's character and his persona. All in all, I think the non-previous winner finalists are going to be Gem, Joel, Impulse, and Rendog. Personally, I want to see something between Impulse and Rendog because I know that if Rendog's in the finals list, it's because he built up a lot of plot and he had a lot of drama stuff going on. And if Impulse is in the final 2, then it's going to be because he went through a lot of character development. The main problem is that Gem and Joel are just too strong. They're just too resourceful, and they're just too good at PvP. Personally, I think that Impulse is a very strong contender for going against Gem and Joel, simply because his team is over twice as big, basically, if you include Big B, who is basically joining them. And it also consists of a lot of very talented people. Rendog, I think that he could make it really far if, again, he pulls out some roleplay plot thing and he rallies the troops and he could make it to the end and he could do something really cool like he did in Third Life, but he could also go out kind of early like he did in Double Life. It's kind of a wild card, you could say. But to give a conclusive list, I'm going to have to be realistic here, and I'm going to say that with ascending order of likeliness of winning, it's going to be Rendog, Impulse, Joel, and Gem. With Joel versus Gem winning being kind of a 50-50. Anyway, guys, by the time this video goes out, it's going to be right before Session 3 comes out. And we're going to really put this theory to the test about the resourcefulness and about who is going to do the best and who is the most resourceful, because it sounds like Session 3 was completely insane. So anyways, thank you for all of your support and thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.